The studio lights feel hotter than usual. Not just bright, intense. The kind of heat that doesn't come from electricity, but from anticipation. From something about to happen that nobody can quite predict, but everyone can feel. The camera glides across the familiar set of The View. Polished table, coffee mugs, a live audience buzzing with low murmurs. But today there's a tension in the air. Subtle. Electric. Because sitting across from Whoopi Goldberg, EGOT winner, cultural icon, the steady, grounded moderator of the show, is a man known for doing the exact opposite of staying comfortable. Bill Maher. A comedian. A provocateur. A man who built an entire career, on shows like Real Time with Bill Maher, by saying the things others hesitate to even think. And today, he's not holding back. Before we dive into what happened next, because trust me, you are not ready for how this unfolds, hit that subscribe button for talk battles, like this video, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Because by the end of this, you're going to have a lot to say. The applause begins as Bill Maher is introduced. It's loud but uneven, some cheers, some polite claps, and a few scattered murmurs. He walks out with that familiar half-smile, the one that says, "I know something you don't." Whoopi watches him closely. She's been here before, decades in the spotlight, from her Oscar-winning performance in Ghost to her groundbreaking role in The Color Purple. She's faced tough conversations, controversial topics, and heated debates. But there's something different today. Bill sits down, adjusts his jacket, leans slightly forward. The conversation starts calmly. At first, they begin with familiar ground: politics, culture, the state of public discourse. Bill references his long-standing criticism of political correctness, something he's spoken about for years, both on stage and in interviews. "You know," Bill says, casually stirring his coffee, "we've reached a point where people are more afraid of saying the wrong thing than doing the wrong thing." A few chuckles ripple through the audience. Whoopi nods slowly, but her eyes narrow just slightly. "And you think that's new?" she responds, her tone calm but firm. "Because I've been around long enough to tell you, it's always been that way. The difference is, now people are actually being held accountable. There's a shift. Subtle but real." Bill leans back, crossing his arms. Accountable or silenced? A murmur spreads across the audience. Whoopi doesn't flinch. She's been in rooms like this before. Rooms where every word carries weight. Where one sentence can change the entire direction of a conversation. "You're a comedian," she says, her voice steady. "You've made a career out of pushing boundaries. But let's not pretend that everyone has your platform or your protection." That lands. You can feel it. Bill's smile tightens just a little. "And let's not pretend," he fires back, "that shutting people down actually solves anything." The audience reacts, some applause, some uneasy shifting in seats. The co-hosts glance at each other. They can feel it too. This isn't just a conversation anymore. It's becoming something else. Whoopi leans forward now, her hands resting on the table. Her voice drops slightly, not louder but deeper. More grounded. "You're talking about shutting people down," she says. "But what about the people who've been shut down their entire lives? The ones who never had a microphone in the first place?" Silence. Not complete, but heavy. Bill pauses. Just for a second. And in that second, something changes. Because this isn't just about politics anymore. It's about perspective, experience, history. Bill exhales, then leans forward again, his tone sharpening. "And what about the people who feel like they can't even ask a question anymore without being labeled something?" There it is. The line. The one that shifts the room from tension to confrontation. Whoopi tilts her head slightly, studying him. "You can ask a question," she says. "But you don't get to ignore the impact of the answer." The audience reacts, this time louder. Applause. A few gasps. Bill shakes his head, a small laugh escaping. But there's no humor in it. "That's the problem," he says. "Everything is about impact now. What about intent?" Whoopi doesn't hesitate. Intent doesn't erase harm. The words hang in the air. Heavy. Final. And for the first time since the conversation began, Bill Maher doesn't immediately respond. The camera cuts to the audience, some nodding, others whispering. A few look genuinely stunned, because what started as a discussion is now a clash of philosophies. Two people, two worldviews, neither willing to back down. And this is just the beginning. The silence doesn't last long. It can't, because on a stage like The View, silence isn't just awkward, it's dangerous. It means something real has landed, something unresolved. And right now, It's hanging thick in the air between Whoopi Goldberg and Bill Maher. Bill exhales, leaning back slightly, but his eyes stay locked on Whoopi. "See, that's where we disagree," he says, his tone calmer now, but sharper. "Because if intent doesn't matter, then context doesn't matter. And if context doesn't matter, then we're not having conversations anymore. We're having tribunals." A ripple moves through the audience. That word, tribunals, hits differently. Whoopi's expression doesn't change, but her fingers tap lightly against the table. Not nervous. Measured. "You think people asking for respect is a tribunal?" she asks. "No," Bill replies quickly. "I think punishing curiosity is." A few claps. Some louder than before. The co-hosts shift again. One leans forward as if to jump in, but stops. "This isn't something you interrupt." "Not yet." Whoopi tilts her head, her voice steady but firmer now. "Curiosity doesn't exist in a vacuum, Bill. You don't get to ask questions that ignore people's lived experiences and then act surprised when they push back." Bill nods, but it's not agreement. It's acknowledgement. "I'm not saying people shouldn't push back," he says. "I'm saying we've created a culture where the pushback becomes the end of the conversation, not the beginning." There's a pause. And in that pause, the audience leans in. Because now, it's not just about ideology. It's about control of the narrative. Whoopi leans forward again, her voice dropping slightly. "You've been doing real time with Bill Maher for years. You've had politicians, activists, celebrities. You've asked tough questions. Nobody stopped you." Bill's eyes narrow slightly. "That's exactly my point." "No," Whoopi cuts in gently but firmly. "That's your privilege." The word lands harder than anything so far. Privilege. A few audience members gasp. Others clap, louder this time. Bill doesn't laugh now. He sits still. And for a brief second, the confident rhythm he walked in with falters. But only for a second. "Privilege?" he repeats, his voice quieter, but more intense. "You think standing on stage for 40 years, getting attacked from every side, risking your career every time you open your mouth, that's privilege?" Whoopi doesn't blink. "I think being able to keep your platform after all that is." The audience erupts, applause, mixed with audible tension. This is no longer polite disagreement. This is personal. Bill leans forward, elbows on the table now. "You know what's interesting?" he says. "We keep talking about platforms like there's something handed out, instead of something people build." Whoopi nods slowly. "And we keep pretending the starting line is the same for everyone." That hits. Hard. Because now the conversation has shifted beyond media, beyond comedy, into something deeper. History. Access. Opportunity. The kind of things that can't be debated in neat, clean sentences. Bill pauses, then gestures lightly toward Whoopi. "You're an EGOT winner," he says. "You've broken barriers in Hollywood. The color purple, Ghost. You've done things most people only dream of. You know what it takes to rise above." Whoopi's expression softens, just slightly. But her voice doesn't. "I do," she says. "And that's exactly why I know not everyone gets the same shot." The audience quiets again. Because now this isn't just debate. It's testimony. Bill leans back, shaking his head slightly. "But if we keep telling people the system is stacked against them no matter what incentive do they have to try?" A few murmurs. Some nods. Whoopi doesn't respond immediately. Instead, she takes a breath. And when she speaks again, her voice carries something different. Not just conviction. Experience. "Because trying isn't the problem," she says. "Surviving the system long enough to be seen. That's the problem." Silence. Deep. Uncomfortable. Real. The camera cuts to the audience. Some people are nodding slowly. Others look conflicted. Because both of them are making sense. And that's what makes it harder. Bill runs a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. "I just worry," he says, "that we're creating a culture where people are afraid to even engage, because one wrong sentence can define them forever." Whoopi watches him carefully. "And I worry," she replies, "that we've spent too long letting people say harmful things and calling it free speech instead of what it is." Their eyes lock, neither backing down, neither raising their voice. But somehow it feels louder than shouting. One of the co-hosts finally leans in slightly, her voice cautious. "Maybe there's a middle ground here." But before she can finish, Bill speaks again. "Middle ground only works," he says, "if both sides are allowed to stand on it." Whoopi doesn't miss a beat. "And it only works," she counters, "if both sides are willing to listen once they get there." Another pause. Longer this time. Heavier. Because now, The conversation isn't escalating. It's deepening. And that's where it becomes dangerous. Because when people stop arguing to win and start arguing from truth, there's no script anymore. Bill glances briefly at the audience, then back at Whoopi. Do you really think, he asks quieter now, that shutting people down makes things better? Whoopi leans back slightly, her expression thoughtful, but firm. No, she says. But I think ignoring harm makes things worse. The words settle between them. Not explosive, but immovable. And for the first time, it feels like neither of them is trying to convince the other anymore. They're speaking through each other. To the audience, to the culture, to everyone watching at home. And that's when the energy in the room shifts again. Because now, it's not just a debate. It's a mirror. And what it's reflecting isn't comfortable. Not for anyone. The air in the studio feels heavier now. Not louder, denser. Like every word spoken has added weight to the room, pressing down on everyone sitting in it. The bright, polished set of the view suddenly feels smaller, tighter, like the walls themselves are listening. Whoopi Goldberg leans back slightly in her chair, her hands folded now. Not defensive, grounded. Centered. The kind of stillness that doesn't come from hesitation, but from certainty. Across from her, Bill Maher shifts forward again, elbows resting on the table. His earlier sharpness hasn't disappeared, but it's changed. There's more urgency now. Less performance, more conviction. The audience is quiet, not because they've lost interest, because they're holding their breath. Bill breaks the silence first. You know what I think we've lost, he says, his voice lower now. The ability to sit with discomfort without immediately needing to punish it. A few heads in the audience tilt. Some nod slowly. Whoopi studies him carefully before responding. Discomfort isn't the problem, she says. People have been uncomfortable forever. The question is, who's been forced to live in it, and who's just now noticing it? That lands differently than the earlier lines. Softer, but deeper. Bill pauses, his fingers tapping lightly against the table. But if we turn every uncomfortable moment into a moral judgment, he says, we don't leave room for growth. We leave room for fear. Whoopi leans forward slightly, her gaze steady. And if we don't hold people accountable, she replies, we leave room for harm to keep repeating. The words don't clash. They interlock, like two truths that refuse to cancel each other out. The tension shifts again, not explosive, not argumentative, but something more complex. The kind of tension that makes people think. One of the co-hosts glances toward the producers off camera. You can almost feel the silent question. Do we step in? Or let this play out? They let it play out. Because now something real is happening. Bill exhales, then leans back, looking briefly up at the studio lights before returning his gaze to Whoopi. I've spent my entire career, he says, challenging both sides. On Real Time with Bill Maher, on stage everywhere. And what I've seen lately is people becoming less interested in debate and more interested in being right. A few claps. Quieter this time, but intentional. Whoopi nods slowly, acknowledging the point, but not conceding. Being right matters, she says. When people's lives are affected, being right isn't just ego, it's survival. Bill tilts his head slightly. But who decides what right is? Whoopi doesn't hesitate. History does, she says. Experience does. The people who've lived through it do. There's a murmur in the audience, some agreement, some uncertainty. Bill leans forward again, his voice tightening just a bit. But history also shows us that people get it wrong. Over and over again. So if we shut down debate, how do we ever correct ourselves? Whoopi's eyes narrow slightly, not in anger, but in focus. Debate isn't being shut down, she says. It's being challenged. And there's a difference. Bill opens his mouth to respond, but stops. Just for a moment. And in that moment, something unexpected happens. He softens. Not completely. Not visibly to everyone. But enough. You ever feel, he says quieter now, like no matter what you say, someone's already decided who you are? The question hangs in the air. It's not rhetorical. It's personal. And for the first time since this began, Whoopi doesn't answer immediately, because she recognizes it, not as a debate point, but as a feeling. I've felt that my whole life, she says finally. The room stills, because now they're not speaking as opponents. They're speaking as people. She continues, her voice calm but carrying weight. Before the color purple, before Ghost, before any awards, before this table, people had already decided who I was. Bill listens, really listens. And, he asks quietly, And I didn't have the luxury, she says, of pretending it didn't matter. That line doesn't spark applause. It doesn't need to. It settles. Deep. Bill nods slowly, absorbing it. I'm not pretending it doesn't matter, he says. I'm saying we might be making it harder for people to change. Whoopi tilts her head slightly. Change doesn't come from comfort, she replies. It comes from being confronted. Bill lets out a small breath, almost a laugh, but not quite. Then I guess we're doing a great job right now, he says. A ripple of laughter breaks the tension, brief but real. Even Whoopi smiles slightly. But it fades quickly, because they both know. This isn't over. Bill straightens, his tone sharpening again, but not aggressively. Deliberately. I just don't want us to lose the ability to talk to each other, he says. Because once that's gone, everything else follows. Whoopi nods, her expression serious. And I don't want us to keep talking, she says, without actually hearing each other. Their eyes meet again. And this time, there's no edge, no immediate pushback, just recognition. Two people, two completely different paths, both shaped by decades in the spotlight. Bill, the outspoken critic who built a career questioning everything. Whoopi, the trailblazer who carried stories and voices onto screens long before many were ready to hear them. And in this moment, neither of them is winning, because this isn't about winning anymore. It's about something much harder. Understanding. The audience shifts again. Some people wiping their hands together nervously, others leaning forward like they don't want to miss a single word. Because they can feel it. They're watching something rare. Not a shouting match. Not a viral clip designed for outrage. But a real, unresolved conversation. The kind that doesn't end cleanly. The kind that lingers. Bill glances down briefly, then back up. You think we're getting better? He asks. Whoopi doesn't answer right away. She looks out at the audience, then back at him. I think we're trying, she says. A pause. And I think trying is messy. Bill nods slowly. Yeah, he says. It is. Another silence. But this one feels different. Not heavy. Not tense. Just unfinished. And somehow, that's even more powerful. Because everyone in that room knows. What just happened didn't resolve anything. It didn't wrap up neatly. It didn't give easy answers. But it meant something. And as the cameras keep rolling, you can feel it building towards something else. Not louder. Not bigger. But deeper. And whatever comes next is going to leave a mark. For a moment, no one moves. Not the audience. Not the co-hosts. Not even the crew behind the cameras. The conversation doesn't end. It simply stops. And somehow, that feels louder than anything that's been said. The studio of The View sits suspended in a rare kind of silence. The kind that only happens when something real has just unfolded, and no one is quite sure how to react to it. Whoopi Goldberg leans back slowly in her chair, her expression composed but thoughtful. Not victorious. Not defeated. Just reflective. Across from her, Bill Maher exhales and glances briefly toward the audience. For the first time since he walked onto the stage, there's no smirk. No quick remark waiting to fire. Just a quiet acknowledgement. The applause starts hesitantly. A few claps. Then more. And then suddenly it builds. Not explosive. Not celebratory. But respectful. Because whatever just happened, it wasn't entertainment. It was something closer to truth. The camera pans across the audience. Some people are clapping slowly. Others remain still, their expressions distant, like they're still processing everything they just heard. A woman in the front row shakes her head slightly, not in disagreement, but in disbelief at how far the conversation went. One of the co-hosts finally leans in, her voice softer than usual. Well, I think we all need a second after that. A light ripple of laughter moves through the room, but it doesn't break the weight of the moment. It just softens it. Whoopi nods slightly, her hands resting on the table again. Yeah, she says quietly. That's what real conversations do. Bill glances at her. And for a brief second, there's no debate between them. Just mutual recognition. The segment wraps. Music cues gently. The cameras begin to pull back. But the energy doesn't fade. Because the real aftermath? It's just beginning. Backstage, the atmosphere shifts again. The bright lights are gone, replaced by cooler tones and hushed voices. Crew members move quickly, whispering to each other, glancing back toward the stage like they've just witnessed something they weren't prepared for. Bill walks down the hallway, his pace steady, but slower than when he arrived. A producer approaches him, saying something quietly. He nods, but doesn't stop walking. On the other side, Whoopi stands near the dressing area, speaking softly with one of the show's staff members. Her tone is calm, measured, but there's a depth in her eyes that wasn't there before the segment started. Not exhaustion, not frustration, just reflection. Because moments like that don't end when the camera's cut. They linger. They echo. And outside the studio, the explosion begins. Clips from the episode hit social media within minutes. A short segment, Whoopi saying, "Intent doesn't erase harm," starts trending almost instantly. Another, Bill asking, "What about intent?" sparks its own wave of reactions. Within an hour, hashtags are everywhere. Discussions, debates, arguments. People aren't just watching what happened. They're choosing sides. Some praise Whoopi for standing firm, pointing to her decades of work, from The Color Purple to Ghost, and her history of speaking openly about social issues. They call her perspective grounded, lived, necessary. Others rally behind Bill, referencing his long career on Real Time with Bill Maher, his reputation for challenging norms, and his insistence on protecting open dialogue. They call him fearless, consistent, unapologetic. But what's striking isn't the division. It's the intensity. Because this didn't feel like a scripted segment. It felt real. And real moments hit harder. Clips are dissected frame by frame. Body language analyzed. Tone debated. Headlines begin to form. Tense exchange on daytime TV sparks national debate. Maher versus Goldberg, a clash of perspectives. When conversation becomes confrontation. And underneath every post, every video, every headline, thousands of comments. People sharing their own experiences, their own frustrations, their own truths. Because what happened on that stage? It didn't just belong to Bill Maher and Whoopi Goldberg. It belonged to everyone watching. Back inside the studio, long after the audience has left. The chairs remain. The table is still set. But the energy is different now. Quieter. Heavier. Like the room itself is holding on to what was said. Because some conversations don't end when the words stop. They stay. In the silence. In the memory. In the questions they leave behind. Later that evening, both Bill and Whoopi appear in separate interviews, brief, measured. Bill, when asked about the moment, simply says, "I think we need more conversations like that, not fewer." Whoopi, in her own response, says, "If it made people think, then it mattered." Neither escalates it. Neither walks it back. And somehow, that makes it even more powerful. Because there's no resolution. No clear winner. No final word. Just two perspectives. Still standing. And maybe that's the point. Because not every battle ends with a victory. Some end with understanding. Some end with discomfort. And some just begin something bigger. Now it's your turn. What did you think about this intense exchange between Whoopi Goldberg and Bill Maher? Who made the stronger argument? Or do you think the truth lies somewhere in between? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to Talk Battles for more powerful, reality-inspired confrontations that go beyond the surface. Because the next conversation might be even bigger.